All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special edition of Superhero Pantheon Limited Edition. On tonight's episode, we are going to discuss the first and maybe only season, question mark, of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. We do know that there is going to be a Captain America 4. We don't know about any future television projects, but we do know that Anthony Mackie's now Captain America, spoiler alert, is going to be back in some form in a film. This episode, we are going to discuss all 6 episodes. We're going to be spoiling things pretty liberally. We are going to be discussing some speculation, probably get into some of that. If you would like to follow us, get in contact with us, do so at Hero Pantheon. Make sure you leave a 4 or 5 star review on your Spotify's, your Apple Podcasts, any of the podcasting platforms where you listen to this podcast so that people can get to love this show and the great work that the folks at The Real World are doing, including Kevin Ford and I. We are going to be doing the final season of *Halt and Catch Fire*. Our basically the series finale of that mini series will be forthcoming next week. Brian, one of the longest podcasts that has ever been on this podcasting network, 3.5 hours of discussion of *Halt and Catch Fire* season 4. So you have that to look forward to. Matt Waters and Ben Phillips will be returning to the podcasting airways very soon, as they will be discussing the 1990s in their series. There will be movies, as they will be assessing kind of their 25 best films from that particular decade. And you can also go back into the archives and listen to all the episodes of Superhero Pantheon, Pantheon Plus, any of the miniseries that we have done about trilogies such as Lord of the Rings, Beverly Hills Cop, Modern Planet of the Apes. So make sure that you go ahead and do that. So definitely wanted to make sure to get some plugs in there this week. But of course, my co-host for this episode and for all of the episodes previously is Brian DeBrain. You can find him at Brian DeBrain. And Brian, I think we walked away with some very positive feelings about WandaVision, and it seems like even though there were definitely some issues I think people had with the finale, and even with some of the storytelling. I think people walked away generally very positive about WandaVision. I think the reaction to Falcon and the Winter Soldier has been even more mixed for a number of reasons, and I think there are clearly reasons why. A possible aborted storyline involving a virus that may have been cut. Also, issues with the pandemic. I think that this show is very clearly trying to attempt to do some things that the Marvel Cinematic Universe has never attempted to do, as far as examining race relations and politics. And Brian, I certainly think this show was a mixed bag, but what say you? What did you think of Falcon and the Winter Soldier overall?
I liked a lot of it. Not all of it, but I liked a lot of it. I wasn't a fan of the Flag Smashers, but with the whole mix or Nick's plot line of the virus thing, and apparently Mama Donia was like going to be like a bigger character, but they cut that completely because she was just dead by the time we saw her. So there was a lot cut, and there's obviously a lot of plot that was cut because there's a lot of confusing stuff with the Flag Smashers and all that, and Carly and her motivations and all that stuff. I wasn't a big fan of that. There was some weird clunkiness with the power broker towards the end. I mean, Sharon Carter. I get why people are upset that she's the power broker, but it could be a plethora of things. I mean, she's probably really pissed off that the government turned her back or turned their back against her, and then for someone to be so loyal and come from a family that loyal and generational of the Carter family to be turned, away from the U.S. government, that might actually piss someone off to the point where they want to get revenge after like 7 years on the DL and finally coming back. So maybe there is a reasoning for that, but overall, I thought Sam's journey was just incredible. Like the stuff with Isaiah Bradley was incredible. I thought like I think my favorite parts of this stuff were more the drama stuff, the dialogue, him with his family in Louisiana, the boat stuff, all that stuff I thought was great. A lot of good character work there. I think a lot of people expected a lot more action, and I've heard of different reviews about how people wanted more action from the first couple episodes and how people liked the first couple episodes because it lacked the action. It's very mixed on what people wanted. People wanted Lethal Weapon. People wanted, something like finally, Marvel's talking about the power and the effect of being a black man and being Captain America, the race relations with that, and they wanted to do all this stuff plus the stuff with Bucky, and then you threw in Zemo in there. So I felt like they tried to do so much that they kind of got overrun, and then the pandemic hit, and then with the alleged cut storyline, that just made it even worse because with the 6 episodes we were given, it was way longer than the time we were given for WandaVision, like total time, because the episodes were way longer, even though it was 6 episodes compared to 9. But I still felt like this deserved maybe 8 to 10 because you still needed a lot of development with Carly and the Flag Smashers because they kind of appear out of nowhere. There was more tell than show when it came to their backstory because we just see them as the Flag Smashers. We don't see them going through the struggles. So I felt like there was a lot of missed opportunity there. But I'm willing to give the benefit of the doubt because there was a lot just going on scheduling wise and how crazy the schedule was. And even if you delayed the show, I don't know. I don't know. If you delayed it another 6 months, I don't know if that would have changed things as much, if the schedules would have been the same, or if you've been able to accomplish what you wanted to accomplish pre-pandemic due to the scheduling. So it's very hard to say, but I'm willing to give the benefit of the doubt because I really had some emotional like breakdowns watching the Isaiah Bradley stuff, especially the end. Like I just lost it. I don't know why. It just hit really hard, and it was just maybe the fact that some a character like that feels like there's no hope, and then you have a character like Sam to give you that hope, and there's that contrast and the generational contrast and the different views, and coming to kind of like finding a peace towards it at the end. That was kind of touching, and it really got to me. So there's a lot of good and a bad, but I felt like I think the good outweighed the bad to the point where I want Malcolm Spellman to come back. He's the show creator. Mixed bag on who, if you're a fan of his work in the past or not, but I felt like the dialogue, the really important dialogue, that the themes that they're trying to deliver in this show, like the really important stuff, that's what really delivered for me, and that's what he delivered as the creator.
I think the stuff with Isaiah Bradley and Sam, I think those are some of the best scenes in the show, and I think the emotional through line that takes us from the first time they meet to the second time to what ultimately happens in the finale, I think that is generally some of the strongest material that is in this show. And as I mentioned, I think the MCU is clearly trying to deal with issues that they have never dealt with before. And I think that is reflected in the manner in which they handle some of this material. I think there are clearly attempts at kind of a racial divide and some of the same racial tension that exists in this country as it is currently constructed compared to this show. But in no way do I think this. I don't think that this show justified being 6 hours long, and I think that is overall the biggest problem because when you are telling a 6 hour story, you have to be able to clearly understand how to do that, and you have to have episodes. You have to have clear episodes that tell story in one episode and have a beginning, a middle, and an end to a story in an episode. I think that is where television is at its best. And I think back to the show that we talked about previously, two shows we've talked about previously. I think the thing that made Watchmen so good was not just the fact that it was so comprehensive and it did such a good job of kind of examining race relations in this really interesting way where the world was parallel, was different, but it also had a lot of similarities compared to our own. But the reality is that if you look at what made Watchmen so good, is that it also was able to have individualized episodes that had beginnings, middle, and ends, in individual themes within those episodes. The problem with Falcon and Winter Soldier is they didn't have that. This was an ongoing story, and it certainly felt like at times episodes just ended in the middle of scenes as opposed to feeling like complete stories told beginning, middle, and end. And I think what ends up happening when you have a 6 episode television series that is trying to be a 6 hour movie, what ends up happening is you end up with a character like John Walker, who is seemingly positioned to be the new Captain America, seemingly at times trying to do the right thing, but also seemingly wanting to have a big heel turn. And he, in fact, one of the more dramatic endings of one of the episodes is when he murdered that member of the Face Smashers. But even that specific incident did not seem to have a lot of weight attached to it because, again, even though this is 6 hours, there's so many antagonists, there's so much story going on that they really did not have time to give Wyatt Russell's John Walker a lot of development. And that's not to say that Wyatt Russell was the problem. I think Wyatt Russell is perfectly cast in this role because Wyatt Russell is somebody who did audition to play Captain America all the way back in 2011. I like the idea of bringing him in to play this specific role. I think what he is able to capture, I think he's good. And in fact, I could go up and down this cast. And with the exception of, I would say, one person, I really like the cast. I think Daniel Bruhl, he's having an absolute ball as Baron Zemo. But did Baron Zemo even need to be in this show? I would question what his value was to the show, except for being kind of the Joe Pesci in Lethal Weapons 2, 3, and 4. Like, that was basically his role. And even the time when he put on his full Zemo costume, it didn't even really make sense that he would do that. And it was very bizarre. And, like, there's also other things as well, kind of minor things. Like, so you bring in Danny Ramirez as Joaquin Torres, and he's kind of Sam's, kind of partner at certain points. But, I mean, he isn't even in the last episode, and it was just bizarre because, obviously, for those who don't know, he is possibly the next Falcon. If now that Sam is Captain America, there's going to be a new Falcon, and there's a possibility that could be Joaquin Torres. But he isn't even in the last episode, and it just feels like there was not a lot of connected tissue between episodes. It feels like Sarah Wilson, who was Sam's sister, was kind of disappearing in and out of the show. And getting into what I consider to be the biggest issue with the show is, and so to me, the MVP of the show is Emily Van Camp's agent, because Emily Van Camp is billed as third. She gets third billing in the show, and she is on screen for about 25 minutes of the 6 hours, probably even less than that. She's in like 3 or 4 episodes. She somehow teleports from where she is to New York in the final episode, which was just bizarre to me. And the Sharon Carter that we knew in Captain America Winter Soldier and Captain America Civil War, that is not the Sharon Carter that is here. And some people, you could talk about the blip and you can talk about all this stuff, but she literally was making out with Steve Rogers in Captain America Civil War, and now she has just basically performed a full heel turn, and it just feels like, again, there is no connective tissue between what happened. You talked about the telling and not showing, and that's an example of that. There's a lot of telling of what Sharon Carter has done and has gone through, but there really isn't a lot of showing. And part of the essence of this television series and of all the MCU TV shows should be to have this connective tissue. And if we're not going to do that, then this should have been a 2.5 hour show or a 2.5 hour movie. I'm fully convinced of the fact that this TV show did not justify the full 6 hours. And I'm not necessarily a huge fan of the creative team behind this. I think there were a lot of issues on the creative end, both from the writer's perspective, with Malcolm Spellman as well as Derek Kolstad, who wrote the middle 2 episodes, and even I think some of the direction also had its problems in the final episode. Like, something that I thought was really unusual was that a lot of the climax took place at night, and that is something that Marvel has almost never done, at least since Kevin Feige came to power. So much of the events of various movies have taken place during the day, or at least in sunlight, because it's a hell of a lot easier to see what's going on. So I think a lot of the action in the final episode is muddled. So I think that there are a lot of issues in this show, and I think a lot of it is on the technical end. I think Anthony Mackie is doing some good work. I think Sebastian Stan is doing the best he can, even though he basically does not get to have a sense of humor. But I think that there is a lot of the show that did not work for me. And for me, I consider this to be like bottom tier Marvel, and when I say bottom tier Marvel, other than Thor: The Dark World, which I think is going to continue to retain the title of the worst project in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. For me, this is right there at that level.
I wouldn't put it that low, just because I felt like there's so many powerful moments within the writing and the drama and the dialogue. If you ignore the action stuff, like I feel like the action stuff was kind of like shoehorned in, kind of like they had to like make it an action show. Because if you had a few episodes without action, you were gonna have a bunch of complaints. And there were some of those episodes, like episodes like 2 and 3, where there was like not even a lot of action, and then there was still like complaints about it that I heard about. So it's hard to balance everything out. You know what I mean? And I do think that in if in the Captain America 4 movie when they do that, I think it'll be a lot better. I think there'll be a lot more tightening up, and I think they'll play to people's strengths because, like, you felt like they were stretching things out. I felt like some things they didn't talk about enough or go into enough. So I think now that all the pieces are laid out and everything is kind of like we know what's going on now, I think a movie is going to be more tightly paced and a more tightly edited movie, and everything will be kind of like what we're used to. Because obviously with 6 episodes, like I'm used to like HBO miniseries and stuff like that, so I'm used to different types of pacing. But I get it because it's like 6 episodes, right? So 6 episodes meaning it's got to be very, it's got to be edited in such a way where it flows as a show. But for me, I kind of was like, okay, like with the writing and stuff like that, I'm kind of lenient when it comes to this because this is kind of like new kind of territory for them for Marvel. And after this was supposed to be the first show, not WandaVision. This was supposed to be the first one. So that kind of shows you like how far out they were planning this out, and then the pandemic just completely just threw that out of whack too. So in terms of that, I'm like I said, I'm willing to not forgive quote necessarily, but take the benefit of the doubt. So I think what they laid out is going to be great for the movie. I think that there's still a lot you could do. Isaiah Bradley coming back and maybe its own miniseries as well. And you tell that story in a miniseries. The Power Broker stuff, like it's just I felt like maybe they didn't even need the Power Broker stuff, but knowing Kevin Feige and the way that he lays things out like years ahead of time, I get this feeling that the Power Broker thing and Sharon Carter is going to be much bigger than what we see it as. I'm getting the feeling that she was playing all of us this whole time, even going back to Civil War, going back to Winter Soldier. She was probably like the power broker like years before everything else, is my guess now. The way she's acting. There's something to that. And I don't know, maybe she's not a scroll, maybe she is a scroll, but then if she is, why would she?
So when you say that, I assume that you have seen the theory that is out there that says that Sharon Carter is a scroll, and I have to be honest with you. I have kind of mixed feelings about whether they should do that, but in her specific case, I am definitely a believer. Just to explain the wild change in behavior, I would really just rather they make her a scroll.
Yeah, that's the thing is like that's what I was thinking too. But then someone brought this weird thing up that like she did the face or facial change thing that they used in Winter Soldier that Black Widow used at the end of the movie. So like if she's a shapeshifter, why didn't she just do that? But then I guess the idea is you don't want to shapeshift in front of everybody, right? So obviously, but I think if that's what they're going for, then it might actually work in the long term because then it's going to be like, what's going on? How and people are going to get angry, and then once you start revealing scenes, because like you still got this, what is it, Armored Wars or whatever? That's going to star Don Cheadle. So you got to have a villain there, and if this kind of connects to that, I think that Power Broker, she can probably pop up in there, and then if you're going to go with the whole invasion thing with the Secret Invasion show coming up as well, this is where we're all speculating to make the Sharon Carter stuff work, obviously, but that would fit that as well, so that you can kind of set her up for as like the villain for 2 shows. I was just thinking that it would have been better as Artem Zola, but I guess they really just want to get rid of him because that would have been hilarious, but also kind of awesome to me because it's like he's still out there in like random computers doing whatnot. He's just a computer program and he's running a whole pirate country. You know what I mean? Like I thought that would have been incredible, considering the fact that like in the episode, I think it was episode 3 where they killed the scientist, or when Zemo kills that scientist, like all the computer screens, all the billboards immediately had the warrant out or whatever they want to call it, the bounty out for Sam and Winter Soldier and Zemo, like immediately. So I was thinking like, is this Baron or is this Artem Zola? Like that would have made more sense to me, but they could still reveal more later on. We don't know who Sharon Carter was talking to at the end, but there's a lot to play with there. But I'm kind of glad they did this because then now you have a lot more to play with, right? But the thing is, like the motivation behind it all, people are gonna get really frustrated. I was frustrated because like, what's going on? She wouldn't do this, but then it's a long term game with Kevin Feige. Like we always question some decisions in Age of Ultron, and now they're kind of paying off. You know what I mean with the Wandavision stuff, and like the probably even Thor in the Dark World, they're going to redeem some of that too, and they kind of did that in Endgame. So I think Feige's just playing the Endgame, and we're just kind of being impatient a little bit. But I kind of trust him because he's always got stuff laid out years ahead of time. So there's got to be a reason for everything. Even Julia Louis Dreyfus, who probably had no reason to be in the show at all, but there's a reason for everything in the Marvel universe.
I mean, I guess the rumor is that Julia Louis Dreyfus, technically her first cameo was going to be in Black Widow. I guess that's the rumor, and we'll have to see how that pays off when the movie comes out in July. So if that is her first appearance, technically, I think that'll probably click some things into place. So yeah, Julia Louis Dreyfus, who has won Emmy awards for years, playing various characters on Seinfeld, The New Adventures of Old Christine, and perhaps most recently and famously in Veep. She has decided to stop winning Emmys, and she has decided to start collecting paychecks. I don't know. I think her kids are old enough. They are not attending college anymore. Because one of my theories, Brian, is what if Julia Louis Dreyfus's kids are attending Northwestern University, which is, of course, a very expensive school here in Chicago. And like then I would understand like, oh, she's gonna make a lot of money, but apparently not. She wants those fat paychecks, and good for her. That's what I say. I wholeheartedly endorse, especially after for all she has done as a comedian, everything she's done in this business. I can understand looking around at the landscape as it is currently constructed, and saying, you know what, I'm gonna go cameo in a few Marvel projects, play the villain in one or two, hang out in downtown Atlanta for a couple weeks, make my several hundreds of thousands of dollars. I fully endorse what she's doing. If I had the opportunity to do it, Lord, I would too. I think it's a good career move because these are also, quite honestly, the only movies that people are apparently seeing these days. So good for her. That's what I say.
Definitely. It was just kind of weird because I was like, whoa, what is going on here? Because when you see her, you immediately think of comedy. So, like, I think that's what kind of threw people off because I think Val, I don't even know her full name. I'm not going to try to say it. There's like six names, but look it up, people. It's a nerdy thing, but let's call her Val. She she's trying to be funny, and I was laughing and I was getting it. And I know some people were thrown off by it, but I think by the second scene you kind of that she was in, you kind of got used to it in episode six. So I'm glad she's there taking that page. I guess Veep doesn't pay that well, or just, I don't know. Maybe it did, and then now she's just trying to make that Marvel money because I think you can tell she's having fun, which is good because as a veteran actress, she's done so much. I mean, she's probably still making that Seinfeld money too, right? With that syndication deal, the one of the biggest syndication deals of all time, still to this day. Um, I'm glad she's back, or not back, but I'm glad she's in the MCU, and I'm glad that she'll be a recurring character. And I'm wondering what the whole Black Widow situation is going to be, because what I got out of that is like I want this group of the Thunderbolts, right? That's kind of what people want. Um, they didn't tease Thunderbolt Ross in this at all, which I thought was a shocker. I thought that we are definitely going to have him in this, but they're kind of I holding him back maybe because the fans know and they don't want to like be clued out or clued off of it. So I get it, but I really want the Thunderbolts, and the Thunderbolts are like this anti-Avengers team that kind of are run by Ross and some other people down the line, but they kind of want to, make the Avengers look bad. And even though there's kind of not an Avengers anymore, but the current crop of heroes make them look bad and kind of take over. You know what I mean? Because Ross always wants to be in control, and that's what I love about that General Ross character. And I was waiting for some interactions with Ross and Sam and all them, but they didn't do it. So they must be saving it for something because that's some great confrontational stuff that's going to be like really head on. That I'm just wondering what Ross's opinions are and if he's going to go, if they're going to make Ross like the racist kind of route, or they're going to make him like subtly racist. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of things you can do. Maybe don't even do that at all and kind of play it subtly because you know that they're just probably going to brings that thing up about Sam being Cap and not getting authorization from the government, and we know Ross is obsessed with government and order and control and authority. So there's a lot that they can play down the line with that. And I guess Val is kind of that bridge to that, bringing these so-called anti-Avengers Thunderbolt members together. So it's going to be Zemo, it's going to be John Walker. From what I've heard, they're going to bring back what's his name, the Abomination from the Incredible Hulk in 2008, which is now officially canon now, I guess. So
Which makes me very excited for Tim Roth's official return to the MCU. Very excited for that.
so you put that all together, and I think in the long game we're going to get something good. And I think they needed John Walker to come now because you got to plant that seed. And I know they kind of shortchanged him a little bit, maybe a lot, depending on how you look at it. But I never saw him as like this major character. I saw him as like this minor character that's kind of sprouting to be a bigger character later on. So I was kind of comfortable with him not getting the full backstory. But I'm glad what they did with him as well.
Yeah, I think there is certainly some potential in the Valentina character, and I'm also excited to see what they put together with the Thunderbolts, and actually developing the villains a little bit. I think is going to make a huge difference, given the MCU has certainly had its share of villain problems recently. So I think kind of developing them over a series of movies, just like they did with the Avengers, I think is very intriguing. And undoubtedly, we're going to learn a lot more as we get into the rest of Phase 4, which includes Loki, which is coming out this summer. I don't know how it's going to connect necessarily because things seem so much more disparate. But I'm very excited for that show. It looks really, really interesting. And it looks like it's going to capture some Doctor Who energy, which I know will make some people very excited. You've also got Black Widow coming out this summer, and I'm sure that there's going to be some clear connections between that movie and what's currently going on in the MCU. You've also got the Shang-Chi movie. You've got the Eternals. Both of those are coming out later this year. You've also got Spider-Man, the third Spider-Man movie coming out at the end of the year, if you can believe it. I mean, we've got four MCU projects that are slated to come out, basically in the second half of 2021, just in theaters. Not to mention the fact there's also Hawkeye, and there's also Ms. Marvel is quite honestly the show that I am most looking forward to, just because I think it has the potential to be so much more different than a lot of other MCU projects. It seemingly has the least connections to previously known characters, so I am hoping that it feels a lot more like a TV show than some of the other MCU TV shows are to this point. And there's also the What If series. That's going to be a series of fun one-offs, but that's kind of what we have to look forward to. Yeah, I really don't have a lot else to say about Falcon and the Winter Soldier at this point. I think there are certainly some moments from this show that I think were good, especially as we've talked about between Sam and Isaiah. And I think that those are the scenes that I think work the best. But I think that a lot of the Bucky stuff did not necessarily work. I don't even think some of the banter back and forth between Sam and Bucky, which I had pretty high expectations for, given that this was promoted as kind of a buddy cop movie in the vein of a Lethal Weapon, a Beverly Hills Cop, a 48 Hours. You don't even necessarily get a lot of that. There's the one scene that they put out before the show opened, but there really wasn't a lot of that. And I don't know, it felt a little disappointing to me that we didn't get a lot of that, and that Bucky is just this very sullen character. And hopefully that's something that changes as we move forward, and as he gets some peace with himself. So yeah, I think the tone of this show was a bit all over the place at certain points, and I think they really had trouble just balancing this being an actual TV show. And I think that hopefully this will be a learning experience. Like I said, I am much more mixed on the potential of a Captain America 4, given the creative team that is going to be behind it. But we will see. Perhaps a movie will work out much better. Perhaps, formatting this in a 2.5-hour movie will be much better than trying to format this as a 6-hour TV series, because ultimately I don't think this justified its existence. So, I come down Much lower on this. If I were to say WandaVision was a B plus, I would classify this as a C plus. I think this show was not nearly as successful, and I definitely see why Marvel bumped WandaVision up. I can definitely see a scenario where they looked at these two shows, and even aside from the pandemic issues, where they said WandaVision was the much more intriguing and the much more entertaining week to week watch. I really look forward to WandaVision, even though it wasn't perfect. And Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I can't say that I was excited on a week to week basis after the second week. And it's a little concerning because even a show like The Mandalorian, definitely something that I look forward to on a week to week basis because that again was a TV show. And I think that moving forward, if you are going to bring in writers and directors, I think you need to bring in more TV minded people and TV minded people who have experience at show running because otherwise I think you're going to end up with shows that feel like they're stretched out and the complaints about it being a 6 hour movie and some of the pacing problems. So this is definitely something that Marvel, I think they need to really consider because there is a huge difference between a television show and a movie. In some ways, I think MCU has really just cracked the formula on what makes them a successful movie franchise. And Kevin Feige, as a producer, that's what he knows. He doesn't know television as well, and I think it's reflected in some of the issues that WandaVision had a little bit, but a lot more that Falcon and the Winter Soldier had.
Yeah, I agree with that. And my major issues were like the villains and the flag smashers and their whole motivation, and I was not feeling it at all. And uh, I felt like Carly was not listening to the words she was actually that were coming out of her mouth, kind of thing. And I'm like, are you listening to yourself, kind of thing going on? So that was really frustrating. But again, I felt like they just needed to shoehorn in a villain in here, and they couldn't pick like it wasn't Zemo. It couldn't be Zemo, so they had to put in the Flag Smashers, and that was kind of disappointing. But overall, I would give it like I'm gonna do it out of 10. I'm gonna give it a 7.5 out of 10. I felt like just I think Carl Lumley, man, if he doesn't get an Emmy nomination, I think he can qualify under probably Best Supporting Actor in a miniseries or um,
No, actually, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, they are competing for best drama, so they clearly intend to have a second season if they're doing that.
okay, so then he's gonna go for Best Supporting Actor in a drama series. So it's highly possible because I think he was by far the strongest actor. If I'm gonna do a top three, it'll probably be him, Bucky, and then probably Sam. Maybe fourth be Power Broker, Sharon Carter. But yeah, because I felt like Bucky in that scene in Wakanda, and I don't want to forget that because that was one of the most powerful scenes too. That was just incredible stuff, and yeah, I don't know. I just felt like even that one scene, he probably can't get nominated because I know there was this hashtag to get him nominated for that one scene in the beginning of episode 4, I think it was. But man, that was some really powerful stuff, man. And I'd never seen Sebastian Stan act like that before, and that was just tremendous stuff as well. So I got to shout out that. But also, I got really disappointed at the beginning when we had the scene with Sam and Rhodey because that was the first time they were on screen together since the accident in Civil War. And I felt like they really glossed over that. And I felt like that was a really important thing to talk about because you're talking to the guy that paralyzed you. And like, there's a lot to that. And there's a lot about forgiveness and like, that whole situation. But they kind of glossed over that. And I felt like they should have had at least a couple words about that. Like, how are you feeling? How's your back kind of thing? I'm sorry for paralyzing you. Because Sam paralyzed him in Civil War. And that's something I can't forget. But I guess the writers just kind of glossed over. But I felt like Rhodey there needed to be a scene where Rhodey kind of forgave him because it felt like to me there was like an open endedness to that, and they never even talked about that in Infinity War or Endgame because they were just in the battle or whatever. But that was the first time they were on screen together since Civil War, so I thought that was really important. They kind of messed that up, so that's kind of my thing on that.
I mean, I think that is, I think you raise a good point there, and I think that that's something that hopefully these TV shows can start to rectify so that they can have those scenes because I think that has been a lot of what's been missing is the connective tissue between these major events. I think being able to have those scenes that should be the goal of these TV series. So I'm hoping that that's something that gets rectified, but it is admittedly a problem. So, we are done talking about Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but next week we are going to be talking about another streaming weekly release superhero show. Except we are going to be talking about Invincible. Invincible is streaming on Amazon Prime, and I would strongly recommend if you have not been checking out Invincible because your focus has been on Falcon and the Winter Soldier, whatever else is out there, spend this week mainlining Invincible, the season finale, and there's already been, I believe, a season two has already been requested by Amazon. Watch Invincible this week. We will be talking about the entire season next week. As of this recording, I have watched all 7 episodes that have been released, and I think the show is really, really good. The animation is not great, but I think it is an aesthetic choice, and I'll explain that a little bit more next week. So understand that the animation is not what you would see in a Pixar or a Disney animation or even something of that sort. What I think the show does extremely well is telling the story of a young superhero coming into his own, and what a voice cast. I'm going to read off the voice cast next week, and it's probably going to take like 5 minutes. I hopefully everyone will watch the show, and next week Brian and I will be here to discuss Invincible, and I'm very excited for Brian to watch it. He has not watched any of the episodes thus far, and I'm very excited to hear what you think, Brian, because my hope is that you really like it and that we can be very positive on next week's show.
Yeah, it's my last week in my job, so I'm probably going to slack off a little bit. I work at a hotel overnight, and I'm kind of sick of it. There's some shady things going on. So this week, probably on my break around 5 in the morning or something, I'll be starting to watch and binge. So I'll probably knock out these episodes really quick if I'm really slacking off at work this week. So I'm looking forward to binging it. I binged the Boys at the right time too because I had a feeling that I was gonna get hooked. So I binged the first season the night or the couple days before the second season dropped, so it was perfect. So I'm really excited with the whole binging thing because yeah, I think Amazon has it kind of down when they kind of tease you with the 3 episodes. But I'm glad I waited now because now I'm going to be really looking forward to that finale. Since from what I've heard, this is going to be a really addicting show, so I'm kind of excited for that.
So yeah, and then in 2 weeks we are going to be discussing the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. In 3 weeks we will have another TV show, a Netflix streamer to discuss, and yeah, that's pretty much it. So we are done for the month of April. We will be here the entire month of May, and then we will be taking the summer off, June, July, and August. So get your fill of us and our podcasting genius. Get that done over the next 4 weeks, because then we're going to be taking a nice long break. Brian and I are going to recharge our batteries so that we can come back strong in the fall with whatever projects we have to put together. So for Brian, my name is Jerome Cuson. Thank you so much for listening. We will talk to you again next week.
Man, I'm still convinced fucking Winter Soldier killed JFK, and he's got to add at least one of the Kennedys to his list, but it's too late now.